The Legend of Jigong, Chapter 19.
When you picture a confrontation with terrifying absolute power, you usually expect this scene filled with stoic heroism.
Right, like a grand dramatic moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You imagine this lone figure standing in a grand hall, delivering a soaring, righteous speech, while the tyrant just glares down from a throne.
It's serious. I mean, the stakes are literally life and death.
Yeah, and you anticipate a certain reverence for the sheer danger of the situation.
You expect the tone to really match that gravity.
Uh-huh.
The atmosphere should be heavy, emphasizing the bravery it takes to speak truth to power.
But what if the ultimate weapon against a bloodthirsty tyrant isn't a grand, serious speech?
Oh, this is the best part.
Right. What if the best way to dismantle a dictator is with, like, cartoon physics and petty workplace grievances?
It completely changes the dynamic.
It really does.
Yeah.
So for today's deep dive, we are heading into a narrative landscape that completely flips the script on how to fight authority.
We really are.
Our mission today is to explore Chapter 19. We want to understand how absurd humor and magical realism can systematically dismantle terrifying political power.
And to really grasp how radical this confrontation is, we have to look closely at the setting. For you all listening, we are stepping into the grand mansion of Prime Minister Qin.
Also known as Xinjiang, right?
Yes, exactly. And this isn't just a house. I mean, it is the architectural and physical manifestation of supreme earthly authority during the Song dynasty.
The scene laid out in front of us is designed specifically to intimidate.
Oh, absolutely.
Picture a massive, sprawling courtyard. Lining the corridors are 72 family servants and heavily armed guards.
Just standing at attention.
Yeah, forming a literal gauntlet of state violence. And mixed into this environment are the abbot of a local Buddhist temple, the temple's monitoring monk, a man named Guangliang, and various attendants.
And they're just cowering.
Totally, they're awaiting in absolute shivering terror.
Well, that spatial arrangement is so crucial. The Prime Minister holds the power of life and death, and the physical setup really reinforces that.
The armed guards standing tall, the religious figures kneeling and trembling.
Right. It establishes this world where the state's authority supersedes even spiritual devotion. I mean, the air is thick with the expectation of obedience.
And into this incredibly tense array walks our protagonist, Ji Gong, the legendary mad monk.
But he doesn't exactly stride in like a traditional hero, does he?
No. He is literally dragged into the courtyard by a servant named Zhao Tu. But the moment he comes face to face with the prime minister, he does the unthinkable.
Which is just so bold.
While the abbot and the monitoring monk are trembling on the ground, Ji Gong just stands upright. He physically refuses to kneel.
And in this historical context, refusing to kneel isn't just, bad manners.
Right, it's a huge deal.
It is an immediate physical rejection of the entire social order. The Prime Minister's power relies entirely on the performance of submission from everyone around him.
So by simply remaining on his feet, Ji Gong introduces a glitch into the system.
Exactly. It's the spark that ignites the whole conflict.
And that silent, physical defiance immediately triggers the Prime Minister's verbal assault. We are launched straight into a tense interrogation.
And the logic the Prime Minister uses here, it's a masterclass in the arrogance of power.
It really is a fascinating study in authoritarian mental gymnastics.
So the Prime Minister accuses Ji Gong of using dark magic and sorcery to beat his estate manager.
Okay.
But listen to how he justifies his own initial actions that caused the conflict. He claims his managers merely went to Ji Gong's temple to, quote, borrow large timber to build his own pavilion.
Right. He actually argues that demanding this massive amount of expensive timber is him doing the temple a favor.
It's wild.
He frames his exploitation as a privilege for the victims, and he frames the temple's refusal to hand over their property as a failure to do their civic duty.
Classic abuser dynamic.
Demanding gratitude for theft. So he demands the truth about why the Great Stele Pavilion at the temple was being dismantled, fully expecting Ji Gong to grovel, apologize, and explain himself.
But Ji Gong refuses to play the game on the Prime Minister's terms.
He doesn't even try.
Nope. He doesn't defend himself against the serious charges of sorcery, and he doesn't offer a single word of explanation about the pavilion. He just bypasses the accusations entirely.
Okay, let's unpack the sheer audacity of this response. This is like getting dragged into the principal's office for a dress code violation, and before the principal can even hand you a detention slip, you tell them to go sit in the corner for failing to balance the school budget.
That is a perfect analogy.
Ji Gong looks at the most powerful man in the dynasty and completely attacks his morality.
Yeah, he tells the prime minister that as a top official, a man whose position aligns with the 3 stars, he should be accumulating virtue.
And those 3 stars refer to the Chinese gods of fortune, prosperity, and longevity, right?
Yes. So Ji Gong is pointing out that a man granted such a supreme, almost divine mandate should be doing good deeds for the people.
Instead, he is acting like a common thug.
Exactly. Destroying Buddhist grounds without reason. Ji Gong is effectively stating, I am not the one on trial here, you are.
And then he delivers the ultimate insult. Ji Gong doesn't just scold the prime minister, he looks at the surrounding guards and tells them to pull the prime minister down and give him 40 planks before asking any more questions.
I love that part. In a single sentence, Ji Gong completely shatters the carefully constructed power dynamic of that courtyard.
He really does.
He takes the prime minister's ultimate threat, his monopoly on physical violence, and mockingly reflects it right back at him.
Naturally, this level of disrespect causes the prime minister to explode with rage. The illusion of a formal interrogation vanishes.
The gloves come off.
The scene shifts instantly from a verbal sparring match to a terrifying order for a brutal physical execution.
Right, so the prime minister orders his special house law to be used on Ji Gong. And the weapon they bring out highlights the extreme stakes of this confrontation.
It's not just a regular stick.
No, this isn't a standard bamboo cane used for disciplinary beatings. The prime minister orders the use of heavy bamboo sticks that have been specially hollowed out and filled with quicksilver liquid mercury.
The physics behind this weapon design are horrifying. I mean, honestly.
They really are. They operate on the exact same principle as a modern dead blow hammer.
How does that work exactly?
Well, when the executioner swings the hollow bamboo, the heavy liquid mercury pools the bottom of the chamber. But at the exact fraction of a second the wood impacts the victim's body, that liquid metal rushes to the front of the stick.
Oh, wow.
It transfers a massive, delayed, secondary wave of kinetic force. It eliminates any recoil for the executioner and maximizes the blunt force trauma to the victim.
So it's doing damage inside.
Exactly. It is explicitly designed to shatter bones and liquefy internal organs without necessarily breaking the skin immediately.
And 40 hits with a mercury-filled stick are meant to obliterate even the strongest person.
Without a doubt.
It is a weapon designed for absolute agonizing destruction, and the setup for this punishment is highly choreographed.
Very ritualistic.
Ji Gong crouches right among the 5 cowering monks. 3 of the prime minister's servants grab him and pin him to the ground, and they are very deliberate about the positioning. They push his head toward the west.
Right.
Meanwhile, the executioner stands to the south to formally present this mercury-filled weapon to the prime minister before striking.
The precision of those cardinal directions adds a deeply chilling layer to the state's violence.
What do the directions signify?
In traditional Buddhist cosmology, the West is associated with the Pure Land, the direction of the afterlife and the dead.
Oh, okay.
By pointing his head west, they are symbolically condemning him to death before the first blow even lands.
And standing to the south.
Standing to the south is the traditional orientation of the emperor and supreme earthly authority. So the executioner facing south to the prime minister reinforces that this murder is officially sanctioned by the highest power in the land.
That is so dark. So the executioner steps up, the heavy bamboo rises, and 40 brutal hits are delivered.
The dead blow physics of the mercury do their terrible work.
But through the entire horrific beating, Ji Gong doesn't make a single sound. Complete silence.
The guards finally step back, just exhausted. The prime minister leans forward from his seat of power to inspect the broken body of the monk who dared to defy him.
But the reality of the situation suddenly drops. The prime minister realizes they didn't beat Ji Gong at all.
This is the turning point.
The monitoring monk, Guangliang, who had been completely mute during the entire ordeal, suddenly regains his voice and screams out in agony.
He's the one who took the damage.
His flesh is torn, blood is pooling around him. Ji Gong had used his magic to seamlessly, invisibly swap their physical places during the beating.
It's a massive twist.
But, I have to pause here and push back on Ji Gong's status as the hero.
I get that.
This seems incredibly dark. Why is the supposed protagonist using his magic to redirect a horrific, bone-shattering punishment onto a member of his own temple? I mean, Guangliang is just a bystander.
It's a vital question, and it brings us to the core philosophy of magical realism in this specific literary tradition. The magic isn't just a flashy trick to escape pain. It's an instrument of ironic justice.
That's so.
Remember the setup of the courtyard. Guangliang and the temple management were cowering. They had previously allowed the prime minister's men to bully the temple and dismantle the pavilion without a fight. They represented institutional cowardice.
Ah, so they were complicit.
Precisely. By bowing to corrupt authority instead of standing against an unlawful demand, they became extensions of the tyrant's will.
Wow.
The narrative implies that tyrannical authority requires the active, fearful participation of the oppressed to function. Because Guangliang participated in the performance of fear, the magic doles out a very specific karmic retribution.
So because he invited the tyrant's violence into his life by cowering to it, he physically absorbs the consequences of that cowardice.
Exactly.
By cowering in the face of the tyrant, you become the victim of the very system you refuse to fight. That is a profound, if brutal, lesson.
And because that first failure completely shatters his authority in front of his 72 guards, the prime minister is backed into a corner.
He can't just let it go.
He can't simply let this go. He has to double down, which forces Zhigong to escalate the absurdity of his magical defenses.
Attempt number 2 begins with the prime minister swearing a blood oath that he isn't even human if he doesn't beat this monk to death.
Right, he is losing it.
He orders a completely new crew of guards to step up, and Zhigong, still lying casually on the ground, delivers a perfect deadpan response.
This is where it gets so funny.
He looks up at the new executioners and asks, "Did you lay down the bedding?"
The comedic timing fundamentally undermines the terror of the situation.
Completely.
Here is a man facing a weapon designed to liquefy his organs. He's complaining about the lack of a mattress.
And the physical comedy that follows turns the execution ground into a circus.
It really does.
The magic starts actively bending reality. Because Zhigong keeps casually moving around, the new guards have to physically restrain him in the most awkward, humiliating way possible.
It's a mess.
One man climbs up and rides Zhigong's shoulders, holding his ears like steering wheels. Another man straddles his legs to pin them down. A third man has to awkwardly lift Zhigong's 3 layers of clothing so the executioner has a clear shot at his skin.
They are turning themselves into a literal human knot. The fierce, disciplined guards of the highest official in the dynasty look absolutely ridiculous.
So the executioner winds up and swings the mercury-filled bamboo with all his might. But the stick stops exactly a foot away from Zhigong's leg.
He just hovers there.
It hangs in midair, defies all laws of momentum, turns a literal 90-degree corner, and violently strikes the servant who is riding Zhigong's shoulders.
And this is where the author's genius really shines, because the reaction of the victim provides the true punchline.
Right.
Instead of realizing that they are dealing with a powerful sorcerer who is bending physical reality, which, would still maintain a sense of awe and fear, the injured servant turns around and starts screaming angrily at the executioner.
He accuses the executioner of taking personal revenge.
Yes.
He yells that the only reason he got hit with the mercury stick is because he refused to lend the executioner 200 copper coins for lunch earlier that morning.
It is brilliant, weaponized slapstick. It reduces this grand, terrifying execution ordered by the highest official in the land to a petty, middle management workplace grievance.
It's so absurd.
You cannot maintain an aura of life and death terror when your elite executioners are bickering over a 200-coin debt in the middle of a torture chamber.
It completely neuters the fear. Extreme bodily peril is mixing with cartoon physics. It's like a Three Stooges routine.
Exactly like that.
It shatters the facade of a unified, terrifying state apparatus and reveals the petty human greed underneath.
By making the guards look like bumbling fools fighting over pocket change, Zhigong is actively stripping away the prime minister's aura of invincibility.
But the prime minister is losing his mind. He refuses to concede. He orders attempt number 3, this time calling for 80 planks of bamboo, swearing an oath that he will strip himself of his official title if he fails.
To which Zhigong counters with his own mocking oath. If I let you beat me, I swear I won't be a monk.
So the third crew steps up, and they are genuinely terrified of each other now.
Oh, they don't want to get it.
They explicitly coordinate out loud, warning the executioner to aim carefully and not wildly hit the wrong person again. They take aim, the heavy stick falls, it turns a sharp corner in midair once more.
Again.
And this time, it hits the man riding Zhigong's legs directly on the spine, sending him flying forward into the dirt.
Having watched physical force fail 3 times, in increasingly humiliating and cartoonish ways, the Prime Minister finally realizes he is dealing with powerful sorcery.
He's out of options.
He can no longer rely on his guards. The state's monopoly on physical violence has been broken. So he pivots. He attempts to use his ultimate political and spiritual authority to crush the monk himself.
The Prime Minister orders the Hall Cretans to be completely removed. He steps out from the shadows in person.
His logic here is rooted deeply in the feudal belief systems of the time. He believes that his sheer presence, his aura as the reigning first-rank prime minister of the dynasty, will act as a spiritual ward to dispel Jigong's magic.
We get this incredibly detailed, almost poetic description of the Prime Minister as he steps out onto the porch.
It's very vivid.
And we are seeing him from a very specific perspective. We are looking through the eyes of Jigong, who is still lying casually on the ground looking up.
The narrative spends a significant amount of time detailing his majestic attire, building up this image of absolute divine right. First, there's a tall black gauze hat with long wings that stretch outward, a strict symbol of high governmental office in the Song dynasty.
And the robe, right.
Right. He wears the first-rank sable, denoting his position at the absolute pinnacle of the bureaucratic hierarchy.
It's a purple silk robe, heavily embroidered with mountains, seas, dragons, and 5-colored clouds.
And purple dye was highly restricted, reserved only for the elite. Those embroidered mountains, seas, and dragons aren't just fashion choices. They represent the cosmology of the empire.
So it's like a wearable map of the cosmos.
Yes. By wearing it, he is claiming a divine mandate over all creation. He wears a glowing white jade belt adorned with 8 treasures and fine black boots with white square-toed soles. His clothing tells us he is practically a god on Earth.
But then the illusion shatters.
Oh, completely.
The story contrasts these beautiful, majestic clothes with the horrifying physical description of the man actually wearing them. When Jigong looks past the purple silk and the jade belt, focusing on Xinjiang's actual face and demeanor, the man is shockingly grotesque.
The description is brutal and unsparing. He has a bulging forehead, a sharp, pointed chin, and eyes that are bulging out of his skull.
He's sweating profusely, just rivers of sweat running down his face. He's panting heavily in sheer rage, his chest heaving under that beautiful cosmological map of the empire.
And the boots?
Yes, he is angrily stomping his fine, square-toed boots against the floor like a toddler having a massive tantrum.
This visual contrast is the central thesis of the entire scene, and perhaps the entire story. Political power, immense wealth, and prestigious titles can dress a person up in silk and jade.
Right.
They can create a terrifying, intimidating illusion of majesty. But moral corruption physically manifests as grotesque ugliness. So Qin is standing there just enraged, and he gives a direct, terrifying order to his heavily armed servants to beat the monk.
Which is the standard exercise of his power.
Totally. One of the servants steps up, grabs a bamboo stick, and swings it down hard. But the stick doesn't hit the monk.
No, it doesn't.
It literally flies out of the servant's hands, deflects, and almost hits the prime minister himself.
The physical mechanics of that moment are just crucial to understand. The text specifically notes the servant's sheer terror. I mean, his soul almost leaves his body because he nearly struck his master.
Oh, I'd be terrified too.
But notice the monk's reaction. Or, well, his lack of one.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything.
Exactly. Jigong doesn't throw a punch. He doesn't raise an arm to block the strike. He simply stands there, and the universe deflects the blow for him.
It reminds me of a frustrated modern executive.
Huh?
Picture a CEO attempting this massive power play in a sleek glass boardroom, but the technology actively refuses to cooperate.
Oh, right, like the slide deck freezes.
Yeah, the presentation glitches, the microphone feeds back with a horrible screech, and the CEO finally just screams, "Give me the keyboard, I'll do it myself."
That is a perfect analogy.
It entirely undercuts the dignity of the office.
Yeah.
Qin is experiencing a total system failure of his authority, so he bends down, picks up the stick, and prepares to strike the monk himself.
Which demonstrates a profound misunderstanding of the forces he is dealing with.
Because he thinks it's just a clumsy servant.
Exactly. Qin assumes the failure was just human error. He thinks my staff is incompetent, I have to apply the physical force myself.
Right.
He hasn't yet realized that the boundary he is pushing against isn't a physical one at all.
Wow.
Earthly commands, no matter how loud or violent, hold absolutely zero weight against karmic boundaries.
That's fascinating.
By picking up that stick, Qin is projecting his political authority into a space where his title has no currency.
He is effectively barking orders at a hurricane.
Precisely.
And just as he rolls up his sleeves to deliver the blow himself, he is interrupted by something that completely shatters his reality.
Good gong.
Yes, a gong sounds from the inner courtyard. And the text emphasizes how shocking this is because Qin runs an incredibly tight ship.
Very strict.
In a Song Dynasty household of this status, the inner sanctum is strictly forbidden to men. It is like an architectural fortress of protocol. Nobody goes in or out unless there is a dire emergency.
And that architectural segregation is a physical manifestation of his need for control.
Oh, I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, he has established absolute borders within his own home. So when that gong rings, it signals that his most secure private domain has been breached.
Right.
The chaos hasn't just deflected his weapon anymore, it has infiltrated his sanctuary.
So out runs a terrified maidservant screaming that the prime minister's bedroom is on fire.
Which is wild.
It is. And the details of this fire are fascinating because it isn't an assassination attempt or an act of arson.
No, it's much stranger.
The fire was sparked by a solid gold incense burner that somehow caught the green gauze window lattice on fire. It is a completely spontaneous internal combustion of his own luxury.
The fire being started by his own wealth is just a beautiful piece of symbolic irony.
It really is.
His material excess is literally burning his house down.
So the fire is quickly extinguished, but Qin is deeply shaken. He assumes the monk is using dark sorcery to cause this chaos.
Naturally. Blame the monk.
Right. In response, he orders 20 servants, led by a guy named Qim Sheng, to lock the monk in an empty room, promising to inflict 80 bamboo strokes at the third watch, which is around midnight.
A very specific punishment.
Yeah. Then, in his utter frustration, Qin picks up that solid gold incense burner that started the fire and just hurls it to the ground.
He is lashing out at the object that betrayed him. But the text does something very deliberate here.
It does. It pauses this incredibly tense, fast-paced action scene to focus entirely on the physical properties of the object.
Which is so unusual for an action scene.
Right. The gold doesn't break. Because it's solid, cast gold, it just hits the ground with a thud. And the author drops a proverb right in the middle of the narrative.
Let me guess. It's about the value of gold.
Exactly. It says, even a broken gold basin is still valuable. Not a fraction of an ounce is lost.
Wow.
I found this placement completely fascinating. It's not just a flex of Qin's wealth, right?
No, not at all. In Buddhist philosophy, gold often represents heavy, unyielding, earthly attachment.
Okay, that makes sense.
By pausing to remind us how dense and indestructible this burner is, the text seems to be making a direct comparison to Qin's own greed.
That is a highly perceptive reading. The indestructible gold is the perfect metaphor for Qin's stubbornness.
Think about how easily he disrupts everything else in his life.
Right, he shatters the peace of his household.
He upends the lives of his servants.
He locks up an innocent monk.
Exactly. But the one thing he cannot break is his own worldly attachment. The gold refuses to shatter, just as his ego refuses to yield.
Throwing it is basically a tantrum against his own nature. He is trying to destroy the symbol of the chaos, but it just bounces back, heavy and unchanged.
His power is massive, but it is entirely confined to the material realm. The gold remains intact because the material world is the only arena where he actually has any grip.
But that grip is temporary.
Very temporary.
The narrative is preparing to transition from the physical consequences of his arrogance to the spiritual consequences.
The material world is about to clock out for the night.
I love that. And Qin is going to be forced into a jurisdiction where his gold and his titles are completely worthless.
And that transition is deeply visceral.
It really is.
Yeah.
Qin tries to return to a state of normalcy. He sits down for dinner, but his anger is so consuming he can only manage 2 cups of wine.
He's just too worked up.
Yeah, he tends to read by lamplight, which is this classic image of the composed scholar official, but he can't focus. He eventually falls asleep at his desk, resting his head on his arms.
And then everything changes.
The text suddenly shifts the sensory experience. Qin enters a terrifying dream, marked by a sudden blast of freezing cold air blowing into the room,
Oh, that's spooky.
followed by a sound like a roaring bull from a forest losing its color.
The temperature drop and that auditory shift immediately signal that we have left the earthly plane.
Completely.
The atmosphere becomes incredibly hostile to human life.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Into this freezing room marches what I can only describe as a parade of the underworld bureaucracy.
A parade of ghosts.
Yes. 5 ghosts enter, one by one, And they are wildly detailed. We aren't just talking about vague, shadowy spirits.
No, they have very specific character designs.
The first is an 8-foot giant with a black smoke face holding a 3-pronged flaming sky fork.
Purifying.
Then another giant dressed entirely in white wielding a morning stick.
Okay.
And then there's this little ghost with a face like blue mud, cinnabar red eyebrows, and bulging golden eyes lugging around a giant toothed wolf fang club.
It reads like the final boss encounter in a high fantasy video game.
It totally does.
Mm.
But amidst all these terrifying, weapon-wielding demons, there is one ghost dressed exactly like a government official.
Right, in a green satin robe and a Rui hat.
Yeah. His face is pale and square, and instead of a weapon, he carries a pen and a ledger.
The inclusion of the official with the ledger completely changes the nature of the scene.
Why is that?
Well, if it were just monsters with clubs and flaming forks, it would be a simple nightmare about violence, just a monster movie.
Right.
But the accountant of the afterlife reveals the underlying mechanism of Chinese mythological justice.
We often think of hell in Western traditions as a chaotic, fiery pit of eternal screaming.
Yes, very disorganized.
But the Chinese mythological afterlife is frequently depicted as the ultimate, inescapable government administration. It is a mirror of the earthly bureaucracy, but perfected.
A mirror bureaucracy is the perfect way to describe it. Look at the contrast the text is building here.
Okay, let's look at it.
In the waking world, Qin's bureaucracy is crumbling. He gives angry orders, his servants drop their weapons, his house catches fire, his authority just totally fails.
Yeah, it's a mess.
But this underworld parade represents absolute, unwavering precision. Every single ghost has a distinct, inescapable function.
Like a specific job title?
Exactly.
So the giant with the flaming fork is the enforcer, the muscle.
Right.
The ghost dragging heavy iron chains is the apprehender.
Yes.
The one with the morning stick represents the final execution of death, and the official with the pen and ledger is the auditor.
And honestly, the ledger is perhaps the most terrifying weapon in the room.
You think so? Over the flaming sky fork.
Absolutely. It signifies that the universe keeps receipts.
Oh, wow.
Every earthly deed, every abuse of power, every secret act of cruelty has been meticulously documented.
So you can't talk your way out of it.
No, there are no loopholes in the karmic tax code. This underworld government doesn't drop its weapons. It doesn't miss its targets.
It serves as a direct, mocking rebuke to Qin's failing earthly power.
Precisely. They are a fully functional cosmic administration, and they have come to audit the prime minister.
And the results of that audit are brutal. The ghosts drag a prisoner into the room.
A very specific prisoner.
Yeah, this prisoner is heavily bound in shackles and locks. His head is trapped in a kang, his hands and feet manacled. His face is withered, his hair disheveled like tangled grass.
He's in bad shape.
Qin looks closely at this miserable, tortured figure and is absolutely devastated to realize it is his own father.
The old Grand Tutor Qin Hui.
Yes. The horror shifts abruptly from the fear of physical violence to deep existential and familial terror. The text attacks the very foundation of his identity.
And to really grasp the gravity of this moment, we have to look at the history behind the names.
I'll do it.
For anyone listening who isn't deeply familiar with Song Dynasty history, Qin Hui isn't just a random political figure.
No, he's a big deal.
In Chinese history, Qin Hui is widely considered one of the greatest traitors to ever live. He is the official who orchestrated the execution of Yu Fei, a fiercely loyal and brilliant general who is defending the dynasty.
So when this text puts the old Grand Tutor Qin Hui in chains, it operates as a piece of profound historical karma.
Exactly. It's delivering the cosmic justice that the history books couldn't provide at the time.
That historical context really elevates the scene from a simple moral fable to a sweeping statement on legacy.
It does. Think about it. In the waking world, the title Old Grand Tutor demands immediate, unquestioning deference.
It applies wealth, respect, and immunity from consequences.
Right. But King Yama, the supreme judge and ruler of the underworld, does not recognize earthly rank.
And Qin is so blinded by his earthly perspective that he actually says to his father, "I thought you had ascended to heaven."
He really says that.
Yeah. Then he says, "I'll hire high priests and monks tomorrow to save you and help you ascend."
Unbelievable.
He thinks he can just bribe or legislate his father out of hell.
He still believes his wealth and political influence can bridge the gap between the realms. He assumes salvation is just a commodity he can purchase with enough high priests.
But his father immediately shatters that illusion. He confesses that his earthly sins blocking virtuous people from advancing and specifically orchestrating the murder of the Yu family at the Fengbo Pavilion are exactly what condemned him to the Black Hell.
The actions he took to secure his earthly power were the very things that forged his spiritual chains.
Right. The betrayal at the Fengbo Pavilion caused anger in heaven and resentment on earth.
So the father's presence in chains is a visceral warning to the son.
A look into his own future.
Exactly. The political maneuvers that build a dynasty in the waking world are prosecuted as capital crimes in King Yama's court.
The father then delivers a strict, non-negotiable ultimatum.
What does he demand?
He commands Qin to stop destroying Buddhist grounds, specifically pointing out the Great Stele Pavilion at Lingyan Temple. He demands that Qin cease locking up monks, immediately release the ones he has imprisoned, and rebuild the pavilion he destroyed.
The implication there is very clear. The father is pointing to his own shackles and telling his son that if he continues his current path of persecution, those chains are waiting for him.
The karmic inheritance is far more real than the political inheritance.
That's a great way to put it.
And the irony of this entire situation is just staggering. Prime Minister Qin spent his entire evening screaming, hurling gold incense burners, and trying to beat and imprison Qigong.
Right, he was on a rampage.
He used every ounce of his power to crush the Buddhist monks. And now, sitting paralyzed in this terrifying dream, he learns that his only hope to save his tortured father's soul, and ultimately his own, is to literally beg those same monks for help.
Wow. The very people he viewed as pests to be eradicated are the only ones holding the keys to his family's salvation.
The reversal of power is absolute.
In his waking life, Qian operates as the judge, jury, and executioner. But in the grand cosmic ledger, he is nothing more than a defendant waiting for his sentencing.
His entire worldview has been turned inside out.
But he doesn't have time to dwell on it, does he?
No. Qin barely even has time to process the magnitude of this ultimatum. The underworld bureaucracy doesn't linger for emotional family farewells.
They have a schedule to keep.
Exactly. Before Qin can even open his mouth to promise to rebuild the temple, the giant ghost with the black smoke face shakes his yin-yang iron fork.
The muscle steps in.
Yes, the clash is deafening, and he yells for his brothers to drag the father away.
The inescapable machinery of justice resumes its work. The allotted time for the visit is over, and no amount of pleading from a prime minister will pause the clock.
Qin reaches out, desperately trying to grab his father, just to hold on to him.
Right.
And as his hand reaches out, he hears a massive, echoing clang. The sound violently shocks him awake. He opens his eyes, finding himself back in his cold, quiet room, back at his desk, entirely shaken by the interruption.
What a place to end it.
Right. And that is exactly where our source material leaves us hanging.